Hi friends, please close your eyes for a moment. Online friends, please type a yes if you can see me and hear me all right. Thank you for your inputs. Yeah, please close your eyes for a moment. Brother, raise your hand please. The one in black. Yes. What do you understand by class struggle? Okay. More. Continue. How does society change from one type to another through the madhyam of class struggle? नहीं रिवाइज किया. ब्रदर, यस, अभी पढ़ रहे थे आप. 20 मिनट घर पे पढ़ लिया करो बच्चों. हाँ, ओनली 20 मिनट्स फॉर द सेक ऑफ योर प्रिपरेशन. बिटिया, एब्सोल्युटली. Wonderful new production systems start emerging in the womb of the old society. Continue, brother. Raise your hand. Yes. Continue from where she has left off, which is that new production technology or new productive forces start emerging in the womb of the old society. After that, the old relations of production start serving as an impediment in the further development of new productive forces. You need to be louder, yeah? I'm straining my hearing, but between the between the rising class and the ruling class. Let's put it this way, huh? Very good. Okay, and the rising class will also mobilize the support of the brother. ठीक है, इतने कंटेम्प्ट के साथ मत बोलो उनके बारे में. लोएस्ट क्लास ऑफ द हैव नॉट्स. ठीक है, गुड. ठीक है, वेरी वेल समड अप. देन क्या पढ़ा था हमने? हाँ, हाउ विल द कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटी ट्रांसफॉर्म इनटू अ कम्युनिस्ट सोसाइटी, ब्रदर? Why? Why or how? And tell me, like, what are the chances that communism will replace capitalism according to Sri Marx? Okay. Okay, so a proletariat revolution will result in this change, and what are the chances of the proletariat revolution taking place? It is %. साफ बात है, it is a certainty that it will take place, है ना? So bete, tell me how or why will this Why is this a certainty that the proletariat revolution will occur? Minority and majority, which is right, but you're not addressing my question. You know? What are those reasons? That is what you have to tell me. Advancement of technology does what? तो उससे रेवोल्यूशन क्यों हो जाएगा? टेक्नोलॉजी अगर बेहतर होगी उससे रेवोल्यूशन क्यों आना? क्यों? टेक्नोलॉजी से क्या रिलेशन वर्कर्स का? ठीक है, वन एस्पेक्ट. बिटिया, there might be
contradiction between the workers and the product that they produce, because they don't have any ownership over the products that they.
ठीक है. बिटिया, capitalist society becomes inherently unstable because of the fundamental conflict of interest between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, and this conflict cannot be resolved within the framework of a capitalist society. Brother? A contradiction between the social nature of production and the individual nature of ownership, which is what I think she was also trying to say in a different way. Certain social processes are underway which will ensure the downfall of capitalism. What are those processes, brother? At the back. Yes. The one in white. जब वो नहीं करते आइडेंटिफाई, वो क्या बोलते हैं उनको? याद नहीं आ रहा से कैसे काम चलेगा? ब्रदर इन ब्लू, what social processes will ensure the downfall of capitalism? De-skilling and homogenization of the workforce. And what will result in de-skilling and homogenization of the workforce? Advancement in technology. Wonderful. Bitia? Yes. The petit bourgeois will sink into the proletariat. The third point is what? Brother? In specs. Yes. Sorry? Pauperization of the proletariat. Very good. What is the next point? The brother in specs. More workers will congregate in larger factories. What is the next point? The brother in specs. Yes. Which was mentioned, the pauperization of the working class. So, okay, tell me what do you understand by the term class in itself? Wonderful. The proletariat do not identify themselves as belonging to the same class. They have false class consciousness. Why do they have false class consciousness? Because their minds are clouded by the ruling class ideology. ठीक है. And after class polarization, what will happen? I was absent will happen. Wonderful. Class in itself will transform into a class for itself. Bitia, your neighbor? Yes. What do you understand by the term class for itself? ठीक है. You're not using Marxist bhasha, but you have the understanding of the topic. So the workers will now realize the reality of their situation. They will realize they are being exploited and oppressed. They will identify, or they will realize that they have common class interests. And they will become a, what, Betty? They will transform into a ट्रू क्लास कॉन्शियसनेस तो आएगी, उससे वो क्या बन जाएंगे, कैसी क्लास, क्लास फॉर इटसेल्फ. ठीक है. देन टेल मी द बेटी इन रेड, टेल मी व्हाट इज द नेचर ऑफ कम्युनिस्ट सोसाइटी. नो the Bitya in red, and she knows it. She's very happy somebody else has taken up that question. हाँ, नहीं रिवाइज किया, 20 मिनट निकाल के कर लो. बिटिया, her neighbor. हाँ, it is a classless and egalitarian society. What else, brother? There is no private property. What else, brother? All the persons in caps are now being targeted. हाँ, absent. Brother? Whatless? Religionless. बिल्कुल. और बाकियों ने तो उतार दी, छुपा दी. Brother? Sorry? No discrimination. All right. मार्क्सिस्ट भाषा ही इस्तेमाल किया करो. और बताओ. Stateless. और बताओ. हाँ, एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी. और बताओ. No oppression and exploitation. Moneyless. Absent. हाँ, तो बताओ. No private property, that's been spoken of. और बताओ बिटिया, हो चुकी. No alienation. हाँ, abundance from each. Bitya will tell. From each, distribution is based on the principle, production and distribution is based on the principle of from each. ऐसे कोई फारसी नहीं बोल रहा हूं मैं, ऐसे देख रहे हो. ब्रदर, थैंक यू. नहीं, फ्रॉम ईच, व्हाट इज द गवर्निंग प्रिंसिपल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी? फ्रॉम ईच अकॉर्डिंग टू हिज. आप बोल दो, सब मत बोलो. याद आ गया, आप बोल दो. चलो. अकॉर्डिंग टू हिज नीड्स. फ्रॉम ईच अकॉर्डिंग टू हिज, नहीं, मेरे को भी भुला दो. फ्रॉम ईच अकॉर्डिंग टू हिज ability. To each according to his needs. Very good. फिर ठीक है, कम्युनिस्ट सोसाइटी हो गई. फिर कुछ पढ़ा था. हाँ, बताओ बिटिया, व्हाट इज द डिक्टेटरशिप ऑफ द प्रोलेटारिएट? हाँ, टेक योर टाइम. हाँ, जब वर्किंग क्लास विद्रोह पे उतर आएंगे फिर क्या होगा? वो तो प्रोलेटारियत रेवोल्यूशन हुआ. फिर किसका कंट्रोल ले लेंगे? नहीं, किस चीज का कंट्रोल ले लेंगे इन दी डिक्टेटरशिप? द स्टेट अपैरेटस, अर्थात सरकार का, सरकारी व्यवस्था का. हाँ, और द मीन्स ऑफ प्रोडक्शन, the economy. They will control the government and the economy. And why? Why does the dictatorship of the proletariat seize control of the government and the economy? To remove the vestiges of capitalism, to demolish the superstructure which supported it. Wonderful. ठीक है? हाँ, पीपल विल वर्क इन कम्युनिज्म फॉर देयर ओन सेटिस्फैक्शन. ठीक है, यही किया था. अब चले जीवन में आगे. हाँ, हाउ मेनी ऑफ अस आर अगेंस्ट द ग्रेट कार्ल मार्क्स? अगेंस्ट, इन डिसएग्रीमेंट विद. क्या प्रॉब्लम है आपको दाढ़ी वाले बाबा से? ब्रदर, guys, listen. So the Marxist schema of the, nature of the economy in a communist society lacks a very crucial aspect, which is motivation to work. Does it really lack? What does Marx say? What is the motivation? Why will people work in a communist society? For the innate satisfaction that work brings, not money or external rewards. Nobody will do the, हमें तो आदत है एक्सटर्नल रिवॉर्ड्स की, उसके बिना हम कैसे ही काम करेंगे. ठीक है ब्रदर. हाँ, सो वन पर्सन विल से मुझे तो 4 तोला सोना चाहिए, है ना. दूसरा बंदा 4 बोरी अनाज में काम चला रहा है. सो नीड्स कैन बी सब्जेक्टिव एंड टुडेज वांट्स बिकम टुमारोज नीड्स. और बताइए ब्रदर. हिज आइडिया इज यूटोपियन, अर्थात सॉरी, इट्स इम्प्रैक्टिकल. It is not practicable. It's unlikely that we will ever be able to establish a communist society. And why do you say that? What about it is impractical? What loopholes are we specifically talking? ठीक है, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I just want you to be slightly more specific. It is too good to be true. You can't have a society where everybody is equal. Society has never been that way. You can't have a classless society. Brother. How many of you agree with that assessment of human nature, that we are basically greedy and selfish people, fundamentally? So we must be. Speaking for our respective selves. भैया मैं तो लालची हूँ, है ना. So why will I work for, like he says so pointedly, why will I work for 10 hours or 15 hours if the other guy is working for 2 hours, producing 1 shirt? Why will I produce 20 shirts? Yeah. If we are at the end of the day, we are going to, all our needs are going to be satisfied by the society, irrespective of what we produce. Why, again coming down to that, that driving force or motivation to produce more is missing. Brother?
We all humans, we have this innate feature of dominate over others. There won't be we won't be able to get an equality in the society. Everyone wants to dominate the other person.
So we are power hungry kind of, huh? Is that, how many of you agree with that? We are innately power hungry and we want to dominate over other people. Are we like that? How many of you do not personally identify with that kind of a statement? कि मैं तो ऐसा नहीं हूँ. Power hungry with a huge, great tendency to dominate over others. अच्छा. And how many of us agree with that assessment for your own self? कि मैं तो ऐसा हूं, गॉड बच के रहेंगे इनसे. ठीक है, नहीं, दैट वाज इन अ लाइटर वेन. और बताइए. Hierarchy, he's saying, brings efficiency in the system. So there is a corrective mechanism built into capitalism which Marx did not foresee and only saw its contradictions and conflicts and what he saw as the imminent downfall of capitalism. But that has not happened. The downfall of capitalism, as Marx predicted, has not happened. Yes, he could not foresee the corrective mechanisms built into capitalism. Brother?
That he does not address this condition of dictatorship of the proletariat. As you can see in the USSR, what happened, like So when they dominate it, then basically the goal of equality is breached over there.
ठीक है. So Marx very naively assumed that people or some members of the proletariat will work to secure the interests of the whole of the society in the dictatorship of the proletariat. But the Soviet experience tells us otherwise. That those people who came to power, they were more self-serving. Brother, Beti. Without competition, we can't realize. So Marxism doesn't have that built-in competition or incentive. Brother?
Sir, as work is driven by the self-satisfaction,
Hmm.
less people will do agriculture, so there may be a funny kind of situation.
So how do you ensure that adequate number of persons are there in various economic activities? You may have far more people in a particular, से सबको पेंटिंग का शौक, गाने का शौक, हाँ, और उसके हिसाब से तो सुबह गा लो, शाम को पेंटिंग कर लो. How will you develop expertise in a field? If you are dabbling in various things like Marx predicts, Beti?
Marx himself in his study of class struggle suggests that like through all the historical epochs, the classes have suffered immensely, the minority classes.
Minority nahi. The numerical majority class has suffered in every historical epoch.
But like the ideal utopian obviously, but the primitive society which is we talked about, the ancient communism, that was a long way back and the society was not diverse back then. It was
So what is your argument in essence?
he's just
हवाई बातें कर रहा है. हाँ,
like it is not possible.
it's not possible.
We have come such a far way and this is the process of life.
This is what it is. Simply accepted, Marx. Too much focus on economic factors. Absolutely. One of the key criticisms of Marx. He sees everything through the lens of the economy.
So before I speak anything, I would like to say that all these points are legitimate, but I would humbly like to disagree with the greedy point, because I believe as children, as small children, they can be as innocent as they can be. So I believe that we are wired by generosity, but we are educated for greed. So
He's saying the innate human nature is generosity, and basically we become greedy because of being socialized, in that way. Right? So we are taught to be greedy. And he gives the example of small children.
secondly, one criticism in Marxist communism, there could be a problem of collective conscience, because he states that there should be no religion. Religion is okay. So religion sometimes brings people together.
So he's saying that Marx considers religion as an opiate, but in reality, religion has a positive or functional role in society. It brings together people, it ensures solidarity. Brother?
Profit, there is risk associated. So it's not like we have shown negative connotation.
He considers profit as as theft. है ना? One student in the previous batch, he made a very pertinent point regarding profit, कि Marx कहता है कि profit is the surplus value of labor appropriated by the capitalist. What about loss? अगर loss हो गया तो क्या worker अपनी wage कटवाएगा? So there is an inbuilt risk into a business venture or enterprise. Bitya? Marx kills the need for any kind of specialization. Absolutely. And in the afternoon he becomes a singer. है ना? हाँ. You're saying the dictatorship of the proletariat, very nicely put, might actually be an impediment, an obstacle in reaching true communism, rather than being a necessary step towards communism. It is a situation in the dictatorship of the proletariat, of the masses, of the working class against that section of the society which rules on their behalf. Beti?
Contradicts on his terms that he's saying in the communist society, people will experience or they will have that true potential in, but for understanding the true potential, you should understand the specialization. But on the other hand, he's contradicting and making the communist society more general. So he's contradicting.
So she's saying we all will be, jack of all trades and masters of none in communism. Right? He is denouncing skill specialization, which is so essential to become good at a task. Right?
He's saying that true potential needs to be catered and obviously specialized.
If you want to harness the full potential of man, you do need him devoted to a particular activity, brother.
So like Marx paints a situation in which there is like a very thin line between the bourgeoisie and
A very thick line or a divide, huh?
the bourgeoisie and proletariat.
Not a line, there's a chasm. Huh?
But if social mobility is present, then some members of proletariat can become bourgeoisie and some members of bourgeoisie can also become proletariat. So if this is present, then this division will become very much thinner.
With due respect, not really. Okay, how we understand social mobility from a Marxist perspective, we'll discuss when we talk about social mobility in detail. But that's not a very legit criticism. Beti? Huh. Do you agree with her? You cannot put a price, you're saying, to everything. Can you put a price to, let's take her example, education? They're saying you can, You guys, you have charged us that. Huh? Or how about, say, let's take it a notch higher. How about mamta? Maa ka pyar, maa ka anchal. Can you put a value to that? That's now another realm we have reached. Huh? Beti?
Karl Marx has ignored that fact कि gap जरूर बढ़ रहा है, but people are getting better off. So I will not go and revolt क्योंकि
She is saying the proletariat are unlikely to rise in a bloody revolution when they are being well taken care of in capitalism. है ना? Very good. हाँ बेटे, आपको 2 हाथ उठाने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. हाँ. He does. I mean, why do you say he doesn't? Are you talking specifically of the communist era? Huh? So you are saying you cannot have a stateless society. You need some sort of regulatory mechanism. हाँ? Marx कहते हैं अपनी शेख चिल्ली वाली बातों में that the society will self-regulate under communist society, which you are saying is simply not possible. You need some sort of a regulatory mechanism, Bitya. He says his theory is scientific. And why do you disagree with that?
But if we see the entire theory is based on full biases towards the working class. He just
He is biased towards the working class, in favor of the working class. Bilkul.
Sir, Marx says that the history of society is the class struggle, means all history is class struggle, right? But the thing is that the evolution of society has also happened without class struggle. Like if we say the Indian society, then we don't require necessarily that class struggle and revolt will happen.
So you are saying basically it's not only or even mainly due to economic factors that social change takes place. There could be other factors, other reasons. Absolutely. Beti?
So जैसे कि उन्होंने बोला कि primitive से ancient से feudal to middle से capitalist उसके बाद उन्होंने कैपिटलिस्ट बना, तो कैपिटलिस्ट भी जरूरी है एज पर वो थ्योरी। और एक पॉइंट है जो कि उन्होंने बहुत ज्यादा इकोनॉमिक टेस्ट पे दो क्लास कर दिए थे, बट व्हाट अबाउट जेंडर इनइक्वालिटी?
What about gender inequality? A point raised by many a feminists. है ना? Marx ignores gender as a basis of division and oppression. He is not talking about the conditions of one half of the world's population in his analysis. Second thing she talked about was, she gave the example of China, and there would be many others, which suggests, Marx gives this linear theory of social change that every society passes through certain stages, but not necessarily so. Say a society like China, we won't say it's changed from communism, we will say from the stage of feudalism. It jumped to the stage of dictatorship of the proletariat. Are you with me? And the industrialization happened in that stage, rather than passing through the capitalist mode. And then she is suggesting now it is moving away from that socialist tendencies and towards capitalism. China का हम बोलते हैं स्टेट कैपिटलिज्म चल रहा है, अलग ही कहानी है उनकी. Brother, both good points.
While describing all profit as such,
Hmm.
I think that Marx
Profit as in PROFIT. Yes.
I think that Marx ignores the fact that it is the entrepreneur who is providing the opportunity to the laborers to be productive and participate in the economy.
He is blind to the contributions of the entrepreneur. Yeah? He considers them chores and vampires and whatnot, oppressors. But really, if a person is putting together so many resources, raw materials, machinery, government regulations you're taking care of, taxation matters, giving risk of whether the business goes or not, managing competition, so many things. Yes or no? उसकी टेंशन है, सरदर्दी है, 100 चीजें हैं. लास्ट 2 कमेंट्स बेटा. साफ बात है, पोलराइजेशन हैज नॉट टेकन प्लेस एज ही एनविसाज्ड. एब्सोल्युटली.
Like in ancient societies, मतलब कि सभी अपने काम मतलब कि सभी करते रहते थे, जैसे कि ट्राइब्स थे पहले. अगर एग्जांपल जो कि अरुंडा ट्राइब का, nobody told them कि okay go follow one particular or make a leader. Like they were all equal and they were in a stateless society. But they naturally decided themselves कि हम एक अपना leader बनाएंगे and we'll follow them and we'll be guided under someone else.
So what are you suggesting?
It's a natural process. Like,
So you're saying state is inevitable. The emergence of a state or some sort of an authority, some sort of a regulatory mechanism is inevitable. You can't have a society without it. Thank you. And make note. A critical analysis of Marxism. Yashri Karl Marx. First point of criticism, and one of the most repeated criticisms of Marxism is it is accused of or criticized for economic determinism. Or economic reductionism. Meaning what? He overemphasizes on economic factors, considers them as if the sole drivers of social change. Ignoring various other drivers of social change. His whole theory is basically an economic theory. Very categorically he writes that economy is the base. Everything else is relegated to the superstructure which is shaped by the economy. चाहे family है, state है, law है, religion है, सब कुछ is a part of the superstructure which is determined by, shaped by the economy. Economy सर्वोपरि है, बाकी सब एवं ही है. Yeah? Critics point out there could be other factors of social change. Factors which could also possibly affect economy. Why should only the superstructure be shaped by the economy, critics argue. Elements of the superstructure may shape the economy. For example, in a lot of societies, lot of developing countries, including ours, there has been state-led economic development. The state or government has played an important role in guiding economic development. Yes or no? Yani an element of the superstructure affecting the economy. So Marx wrongly understood the direction of social change, that it's always economy which results in changes in the economy which result in changes in the superstructure. Changes in the superstructure, critics point out, can also lead to changes in the economy. Likewise, Weber pointed out, whom we will study in detail later, that it was the religious beliefs of the Protestants, Protestant Christians, which led to the development of the capitalist economy. The religious beliefs of the Protestants led to the development of the capitalist economy. So religion, again an element of the superstructure, shaping the economy. The opposite of what Marx suggests, that it is the economy which shapes the elements of the superstructure. According to Weber, it is religion which is an element of the superstructure which had a bearing on the economy or led to changes in the economy. So Marx ka economic determinism it is called because he considers that everything is determined by the economy, or economic reductionism in the sense he reduces everything to economic factors. His whole analysis is based on an analysis of the economy or economic changes. Yes or no? So he overemphasizes on economic factors and downplays the role of other factors of social change. ठीक? Nextly, Marx provides this universal kind of a scheme of social evolution, from primitive communism to ancient slave to feudal to capitalist to the final stage of communism. Yeah? Critics question the universality or the universal applicability of his theory of historical materialism. उसके हिसाब से सारे समाज इन स्टेजेस से गुजरते हैं. क्रिटिक्स कहते हैं सारे समाज इन स्टेजेस से नहीं गुजरते हैं. I repeat, claims of universal application of Marx's theory of historical materialism are questioned by the critics. Claims of universal applicability of Marx's theory of historical materialism are questioned by critics. Simply, not all societies pass through those stages in that order. Like we during the discussion took the example of China. Yes or no? From feudalism jump to dictatorship of the proletariat without passing through the stage of industrial capitalism. सो हर नेशन की अपनी अलग ट्रेजेक्ट्री ऑफ डेवलपमेंट होती है, हर सोसाइटी की. ठीक है. We said that different societies follow a different path of development. Not necessarily all follow the linear evolutionary model as outlined by Marx. है ना? Nextly, critics allege that Marx, had a very basically he wrongly and very naively understood human nature. That human beings by nature are acquisitive. We love to acquire. We love to keep things for ourselves. And I like to bring up that again, the example of a child, which you were mentioning. Now children, they do not have a sense of money or richness or poverty, etc. उनको ये concepts नहीं पता होते. But take a very small child. If you've dealt with children really, you give them anything. You give them a pencil or a pen and try take it back from them. Do they part with it easily? No. They cling to it. मुझे नहीं पता इसकी वैल्यू क्या है, या आई डोंट हैव दिस नोशन ऑफ मनी और सक्सेस और मटीरियल अक्यूमुलेशन एक्सेट्रा, बट ये बस मेरी चीज है और मैं नहीं दूंगा. लड़ लेंगे, फैल लेंगे, रो लेंगे, बट वो उससे पार्ट नहीं होंगे. टेल्स अस व्हाट, कि ह्यूमन बीइंग्स बाय नेचर आर अक्विजिटिव. हमें बटोरना हमारी एक बेसिक टेंडेंसी है. तो चाहे कैपिटलिज्म हो ना हो, मैं वो घड़ा बना के आपको मुफ्त में नहीं दूंगा. मैं अपने घर में सजा लूंगा, 10 घड़े बना के सजा लूंगा. ठीक है, क्योंकि मुझे बटोरना पसंद है. मार्क्स परहैप्स नाइवली कंसिडर्स दैट ह्यूमन बीइंग का हमारा स्पीशीज एसेंस क्या है? टू वर्क. कि हम चाहते हैं, वी लव टू वर्क, वी एक्सप्रेस आवरसेल्व्स थ्रू वर्क. गिवन अ चॉइस, forget others, you tell me, given a choice, would you like to work or laze around? कि अपना चादर में पड़े रहे पूरी सर्दी, without moving or moving just for the washroom and stuff, basics. Many of us would like to कि पड़े रहे हम चादर में, रजाई में अपना पकौड़े खाएं, टीवी देखें. So Hegel in fact considers that, that man is, हमारी बेसिक प्रवृत्ति एक स्लॉथ की तरह है. Man is like a sloth. We are lazy bums, who would rather laze around unless and until poked and forced and compelled to work. आलस है हमारी fundamental tendency, not to work. To work requires some motivation, some incentive to make people work. मार्क्स कहता है, I'll work for the sake of working, because मुझे अच्छा लगता है. कोई नहीं अच्छा लगता मुझे काम करना. So man by nature is possibly more acquisitive than Marx considered, more lazy, yes or no, than Marx considered in his theory. Nextly, may I? Nextly, critics point out that Marx only focuses on class as a relevant category for any analysis. His whole theory is what? It's a theory, it's a class theory. Class interest, class conflict, class struggle, class consciousness, class in itself, class for itself. ये क्लास वो क्लास, हमेशा से क्लास 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 क्लास. In the process, ignoring various other, perhaps equally important or even more important basis of stratification in human societies, or other more, equally important inequalities in human society. Ignoring other basis of stratification, other basis for oppression and exploitation, such as gender. Feminist sociologists would point out, many feminist sociologists. They point out, according to many feminists, gender is a far more fundamental and a far more oppressive system of stratification than even class. Bluntly, अमीर गरीब का इतना खून नहीं चूसता जितना men women का चूसते हैं, और हमेशा से चूसते आए हैं. शी इज सेइंग वेरी एम्फैटिकली, सही बात है. Gender is a far more fundamental division in society. It is a far more important basis of stratification and oppression in society. So Marx sufficiently devotes attention to class analysis, but does not analyze gender as a basis of stratification, ignoring literally half of the world's population. क्या? Likewise, critics would argue, in Indian society, do you see any other very important basis of stratification or division, inequality? What about caste? India में caste consciousness may be far stronger than class consciousness. मेरे अपने सेम जाति वालों से जो भाईचारे की फीलिंग है, वननेस का एक बॉन्ड है, is far stronger than people who belong to my class. As a Brahmin, I feel strongly one with fellow Brahmins, instead of, say, Jats or Gujars who belong to the same class as I do, or same economic standing as I do. Marx ignores these other bases of stratification, ठीक? Like gender, like caste. उसको क्या दिखता है? सिर्फ हैव्स और हैव नॉट्स एज डिफाइंड इन टर्म्स ऑफ इकोनॉमिक क्राइटेरिया या क्लास. ठीक? May I? Another criticism is that Marx and Engels claim that their theory is scientific. Critics contend it is anything but scientific. Firstly, the empirical basis of his writings is very narrow. the empirical basis of his writings is very narrow. So badi scattered and arbitrarily he's collected some data to prove his point, basically, to fit into or substantiate his theory. Simply right, the empirical basis of his theory is very narrow. Secondly, the hallmark of a scientific analysis is objectivity. And Marx is as far removed from objectivity as night is from day. He is anything but objective. His writings clearly reveal where his loyalties, where his heart lies. उसका दिल किसके लिए धड़कता है? किसके लिए? Have nots के लिए, proletariat के लिए. Clearly. His language, the language he employs, he says that capitalists are blood-sucking vampires. They are oppressors. He compares them to leeches, thieves. ये तो एक ऑब्जेक्टिव डिटैच्ड साइंटिफिक एनालिसिस की भाषा ना है. यस और नो? Marx had a very clear political agenda. He wasn't objective. What was his political agenda? The demolition of the capitalist system and its replacement globally by a communist regime or a communist system. He took proactive steps, not just theorizing. He was the leader of the Communist International Movement, one of the this thing. Scientists do not have political agendas basically, right? ये तो कोई साइंटिस्ट का काम ना हुआ. Marx, may I? One of the leaders of the Communist International Movement. C capital I capital. Communist International, it was basically an organization to promote globally the communist ideology. Point is, he was agenda driven. These are the finer details. Communist International वगैरह आप एग्जाम में कहाँ ही लिख पाओगे. But point is that he had a political agenda and was not a neutral, detached, scientific observer of the social world. ठीक है? Marx refused to, or he downplayed or turned a blind eye to harmony and integration present in society. उसको क्या दिखता है? सिर्फ शोषण, सिर्फ लड़ाई, सिर्फ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट. कोई भी समाज क्या केवल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रिडन होके चल सकता है? नहीं. He overemphasizes or harps too much on conflict and oppression, exploitation, while downplaying the role of harmony, the presence of harmony in society. और सिर्फ प्रेजेंट समाज में नहीं, हमेशा से क्या रहा है? कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्ट्रगल, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्ट्रगल, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्ट्रगल. The haves oppressing the have-nots. Why should, friends, tell me, for instance, why should the interests of the haves and the have-nots be diametrically opposite? For example, in capitalist society, can't we create a situation where both the capitalists and the workers benefit? Why must one class necessarily gain only at the expense of the other? कि एक का अगर फायदा होगा तो दूसरे का नुकसान ही होगा. For example, if you are a capitalist, does it really mean that you increase your profits, you have no other way than to cut down on the wages? Clearly not. Frederick Taylor. नहीं. He outlined his theory of what was called scientific management, where what he says basically, that management and workers, rather than fighting it out over how to divide the pie, say if the shirt is for 1,000 rupees, who should get, whether they should get 200 as wages and the the capitalists keep 600 as profits, or say if the total this thing is 800 after raw material cost, or should it be 400 or 300 500, rather than quibbling over that, constantly fighting over that, if both workers and management adopt the best and scientific practices, we can increase the size of the pie. Rather than fighting over how to divide the pie, we can increase together the size of the pie, so that both workers and management benefit. Simply, if you use scientific methods of production will rise so much more, productivity will increase so much more, that you won't need to worry about how to divide the pie. The increase in productivity will benefit all the stakeholders. The management will take home higher profits, workers will take home better wages, and the customers will also benefit in terms of lower prices. क्यों? Because we are producing more efficiently. तो मार्क्स के झांसे में आके एक दूसरे के सर फोड़ना बंद करो, आपस में कोऑपरेट करो, एक विन विन सिचुएशन क्रिएट करो. सर फोड़ने से कुछ नहीं होता, तो इसके ढकोसले में मत आओ. ठीक है? आर यू विद मी? लिखो, है ना? दैट्स व्हाट यू आर आस्किंग इनडायरेक्टली, तो लिखो. फ्रेडरिक टेलर और एफ टेलर्स, हाँ FW टेलर, बिल्कुल वही है. Theory of scientific management or if you want to keep it even simpler, we call it Taylorism. ठीक? Suggests that if workers and management focus on cooperation and adopt scientific approach to production, comma, significant enhancement in productivity can be attained. I repeat, significant enhancement in productivity can be attained. Benefiting all the stakeholders. dash capitalists, workers, and customers. Customers. Simply put, or simply meaning what? That the class interest of the management and the workers need not be incompatible, need not be antagonistic, that one class only gains at the expense of the other. साफ बात है, अगर मेरा बिजनेस अच्छा करेगा, मैं और कमाऊंगा, तो मैं वर्कर्स की सैलरी काटूंगा या बढ़ाऊंगा? बढ़ाऊंगा. I was reading in the newspaper, I don't remember like what was some businessman, he gifted houses and diamond some things to his workers in Gujarat. है ना? So you have such people, yeah. So workers and the business owners together can benefit, simply. It need not be an either or kind of a situation. ये करवाता है मार्क्स लड़ाई, ठीक है, जहां ना भी हो रही हो. Next. Marx is criticized for considering the individual क्या? Unimportant, basically. In Marxist analysis, the individual is given scant importance. Marx considers the individual as unimportant, and should I dare add, even important. In other words, according to Marx, the actions of the individual are governed by or controlled by, shaped by, the actions of the individual are governed by historical forces. By historical forces and the social conditions. And the social conditions. Have you written? The actions of the individual are governed by historical forces and social conditions. धन्यवाद भैया. Particularly what aspect of societal conditions? My economic situation. Yes or no? So what I do, if I am born in if I am a capitalist, what will I do? What will I do according to Marx if I am a capitalist? I will, exploitation is a byproduct. I don't do it like deliberately or whatever. I will seek profit. That is my this thing. And if I am a working class, what will I do? I will sell my labor power in the labor market in return for wages. तो मैं क्या करता हूं, ये सामाजिक व्यवस्था, सामाजिक कंडीशंस निर्धारित करती हैं और मैं कुछ नहीं करता निर्धारित. ठीक है, मैं सिर्फ अपनी किस्मत का फॉलो करता हूं या कंट्रोल्ड. सो मैन इज सीन सिंपली एज अ पपेट in the hands of the society, rather than having any initiative, any volition or free will or agency. Man is a puppet in the hands of the society. Any other theory we made a similar criticism, that man is seen as a puppet in the hands of the society? Functionalism, also very different theories. But on this point, both consider the individual as somewhat unimportant. है ना? फंक्शनलिज्म कहता है हम सोशल नॉर्म्स एंड वैल्यूज के तहत हमारी सोशलाइजेशन कराई जाती है, हम उसको फॉलो करते रहते हैं. ये कहते हैं जो आपकी इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन होगी उस हिसाब से आप जीवन जियोगे. ठीक? Marx, friends, is criticized for having ignored the power of ideas. Having ignored the power of ideas. Marx categorically states in his materialist conception of society that material reality is primary, ideas are secondary. Ideas are secondary. But who argues that ideas can play a very decisive role in the evolution of human societies? It is Hegel. Not in criticism of Marx, before Marx. Okay? But nevertheless, Hegel has highlighted how ideas can play a very powerful role in human history. They can really shape our social world. Marx relegates ideas to the realm of क्या है, कहां बिलोंग करते हैं आइडियाज? हाँ सेकेंडरी तो है ही है. कहां पे रहते हैं? सुपर स्ट्रक्चर. सब कुछ सुपर स्ट्रक्चर एक्सेप्ट फॉर द इकोनॉमी. बट आइडियाज कैन बी अ वेरी पावरफुल driver of social change. Critics point out. And who, friends, is the best example to illustrate the powerful impact of ideas on the evolution of human society? Whose ideas have had a very profound impact on the evolution of human society? Marx himself. Irony of ironies. Yes or no? उनके आइडियाज ने शेप किया द कोर्स ऑफ ह्यूमन सोशल एवोल्यूशन. कितनी सारी सोसाइटीज उस पाथ पे चली गई. ठीक है. Critics point out, friends, that Marx may have been relevant during his own times, but today, sorry, the great Karl Marx, but you are outdated. Marxist theory has outlived its utility as an explanation of society. Marxism is outdated. तब वो शायद समाज को ठीक एक्सप्लेन करता था जब मार्क्स लिख रहा था, पर आजकल आज के कैपिटलिस्ट समाज को वो सही एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर पा रहा है. Marxism may have been relevant then or during his own lifetime, but today it is not an adequate explanation of or analysis of capitalism. Why? You know, when Marx was writing, for instance, the workers were really very exploited lot. They had very long working hours, very low levels of pay. You had stuff even like child labor. Are you with me? Unlivable kind of living conditions. But since then, say sometime in the 20th century, the condition of the working class has greatly improved in the Western capitalist economies. आज का वर्कर उतना शोषित वंचित नहीं है जितने मार्क्स के समय का वर्कर था. क्यों नहीं है? देयर इज अ स्लीव ऑफ प्रो वर्कर लेजिस्लेशन, फॉर इंस्टेंस. यस और नो? By law, working hours have been regulated. Now workers do not work 15 hours a day or 17 hours a day the way they used to during Marx's lifetime. आज के दिन वर्कर कितना होता है वर्क डे? 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Some societies are contemplating 4-day work week. Right? So the number of working hours have been reduced greatly. The living standard of the workers has improved substantially from Marx's times. There is a robust trade union movement to secure the interests of the working class today. Capitalism itself has transformed from exploitative type to welfare capitalism. Welfare capitalism मतलब workers' interests are being secured in the capitalist system. They are not being given the rough treatment. बेनिफिट्स मिलते हैं वर्कर्स को ढेरों, इंश्योरेंस है, पीएफ है, दसों चीजें हैं. So today's workers are far better off than the workers in Marx's times. I'm not talking about India, we are talking about Western capitalist developed societies, है ना? Some critics argue to the extent that the working class have developed a vested interest in the maintenance of the capitalist system. They are, after all, beneficiaries of capitalism rather than being a source of instability and trying to overthrow the system. The working class have developed a vested interest in the maintenance, perpetuation of capitalism. Simply, workers have benefited immensely from capitalism. Marx's predictions have not come true. Which according to him were scientific predictions. Right? He envisaged the establishment of a communist society. Establish हो गई anywhere in the world? No. He talked about and wrote about the downfall of capitalism. Has capitalism fallen? No. It is only expanding and going from strength to strength. He talked about the inevitability of the proletariat revolution. Has that taken place? A bloody proletariat revolution. हो गया? नहीं हुआ. Rather, workers have been co-opted into the capitalist system. क्या? हाँ, बोलो बोलो. Was that a proletariat revolution in China? No, it wasn't. It was not an industrial working class. Even Soviet Union, it was still undergoing, it was not mature or advanced capitalism when Marx says that, there will be a proletariat revolution. It was a workers' revolution, yes, but it wasn't a matured or advanced capitalism. what Marx had written about. And moreover, where capitalism has matured far more, which is in the Western capitalist countries like US and England and France and Germany, there has been no proletariat revolution. Moreover, there is no proletariat revolution in sight. उसके होने के चांसेस भी नहीं लग रहे हैं, कोई संकेत ही नहीं है कि इन दी फोर्सिएबल फ्यूचर होगा. In advanced capitalist economies, Marx talked about, क्या नाम है तुम्हारा, homogenization of the working class. Ralph Dahrendorf, before I come to what he says, you tell me, what is your layman assessment? As capitalism has advanced, has the working class or the skill sets, he talks about de-skilling and homogenization. Marx talks about de-skilling and homogenization. Technology will take away any requirement of any skills from all jobs. What is your layman assessment as capitalism has advanced? Has the working class become de-skilled and more homogeneous, or the opposite process? So as new technologies have emerged, it requires new sets of skills to operate, maintain so many things, deal with those technologies, है ना? Computers आए तो you need computer proficiency, समझ रहे आप? You need software developers, you need hardware whatever, maintainers and internet blah blah, whatever. You get the drift. I don't have those on my fingertips. There are so many jobs related to computers requiring different skill sets. Proficiency in that program or this language and that. Huh? Networks and database management and this or that. Right? So, Marx suggested that with advancement of capitalism, technology advances and that leads to de-skilling and homogenization of the workforce. Critics like Ralph Dahrendorf, they point out that instead what has happened in advanced capitalism, there has been a decomposition of labor. Decomposition of labor. Excuse me. Ralph Dahrendorf suggests there has been a decomposition of labor. Meaning what? Marx suggested what? That skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled workers, they are different in his time, but as time proceeds, technology becomes better, all will become equally de-skilled. Differences will be wiped out. He suggests with advancement of capitalism, skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled workers have become distinct categories, almost different classes. They have separate interests, they don't see eye to eye on anything, their interests do not converge. Are you with me? So rather than homogenization, there has been a decomposition of labor. Or it has simply, working class has become more heterogeneous, while Marx predicted its homogenization. ठीक है? Simply skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled workers have become distinct categories. He says we should in fact give up the concept of a working class. These are different classes rather than being a class. Huh? ठीक है? And the biggest slap on the face of the great Karl Marx, don't write this language. The biggest slap on the face of the great Karl Marx, proving him wrong, has been what? Yes, I heard something murmur and sounded correct. Absolutely. The downfall of the Eastern Bloc. So the wheels of history as they have moved on, history itself has proved Marx wrong. Are you guys aware of the Cold War and the global geopolitical scenario during the Cold War and the downfall of Soviet Russia? Please raise your hands if you are not aware. No issues, I'll explain in brief. How many of us are not aware of this Cold War context and everything? Okay, some are admitting to it, and I'm sure there are others. So broadly, I'll explain in brief what had happened. After the Second World War, the world got divided into two broad blocks, led by two superpowers. One was the Western bloc, led by USA, okay, that professed or that subscribed to the capitalist economic system and the liberal democratic political framework. Theek, liberal democracies, multi-party democracies, the kind we have, that. And in terms of economy, free market economy or capitalist economy. That was the Western bloc led by USA. And this was sometime after the Second World War, yani end of 1940s. Okay? And then the other was the Eastern bloc led by the second superpower, which was USSR, Soviet Russia, which subscribed to the Marxist framework. So, kind of, there was state control over the economy, and in terms of the political system, there was a single party government like you have in China presently. Okay? These were two distinct blocks, and between the two superpowers, and both the superpowers also had their respective military alliances. So in the West you had the NATO, okay, in which you had USA, the leading figure, providing its kind of military chhatra chaya to its allies, particularly Western European countries. Okay? And you had the Eastern Bloc, kya naam hai tumhara, military alliance in the form of Warsaw Pact, where you had Soviet Russia providing its, what's chhatra chaya in English? It's kind of umbrella protection, okay, to its military allies, mostly the Eastern European countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, etc. Okay? The two superpowers were nuclear armed, and they were stockpiling nuclear weapons. So the world was always on tenterhooks during the Cold War period. Okay, it's called a Cold War because there was no hot war. There was always a situation of a hot war or a real military conflict, but that was somehow, it did not happen due to a variety of factors. But there were local skirmishes and there was a lot of tension globally, okay, that it might turn into a hot war, which will be very, very destructive now, given that both superpowers are military capable. And this continued for about 4 decades, okay, or around 40 years, and towards the end of 1980s, late 1980s and early 1990s, what happened that the Eastern Bloc collapsed. Soviet Russia, one world historic event was the dismembering of the Berlin Wall. Berlin Wall was a wall separating West Germany and East Germany. West Germany was a part of the Western Bloc, capitalist and liberal democracy type. Eastern Germany was a part of Eastern Bloc under Russian Soviet influence. Okay? In 1989 or so, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Berlin Wall fall, 1991. Okay? So the Berlin Wall fell, and that was kind of symbolic of the, you know, and the Germany was unified. I think it was 1989. It was? You know, so 1989 the Berlin Wall fell shayad, or near about that time. And that was symbolic of the kind of, and Germany was unified. And it fell because East Germany was having a lot of problems. So that was one major symbolic this thing. And then in 1991, Soviet Russia, which was the second superpower in the world, the leader of the Eastern Bloc, itself collapsed and got dismembered into 15 क्या बोलते हैं, children states or whatever you want to call them. ठीक है? And the what we today call Russia, that is the क्या बोलेंगे उसको, the successor state of USSR. Have you understood? So that is what we were saying in this point, that the fall of the USSR and the Eastern Bloc basically meant what? That communism as a system, as an ideology, stands defeated. That Marxism does not provide an appropriate framework to organize the social and economic lives of the people. These states, these countries tried to organize their lives based on Marxist writings and failed. What better proof that Marxist framework is flawed? May I continue? And very interestingly, friends, why did this bloc collapse? Please appreciate. It was not due to any interference or any sort of, say, prodding off or any attack from the West. Eastern Bloc, including Soviet Russia, collapsed due to use Marxist bhasha, internal contradictions and conflicts. ये नहीं है कि यूएसए ने कुछ किया उसके डिसमेंबरिंग के लिए. Marx had predicted capitalism will collapse under its own weight. Here you had the communist regimes collapsing under their own weight. See, in the Marxist scheme of things, what will you call all these Eastern Bloc countries? Speaking properly? Not communism. They were not the final stage. No? These were dictatorship of the proletariat. They were at that stage. Dictatorships of the proletariat. Why did these communist regimes fail? What was the problem? What was the deficiency? What were the reasons? Anybody? Any student of world history, you all should be. Yes? Why? Absolutely. So the economic causative factor was the absence of any incentive to produce. Motivation, incentive. Why will I produce 20 shirts? Yeah? If the society meets all my needs, even if I am producing 2 shirts. So these economies literally got hollowed out. And it was such a, what should I say, surprise to the whole world. In many ways. Russia, imagine, USSR, one of the 2 superpowers globally. Without any prodding from the outside, it collapsed. Because internally it became very weak. Economically, there were no incentive to, there was no motivation or driving force, which is there in capitalism. What is that? Profit orientation. Meaning that without profit orientation, perhaps it is not a viable system that you will establish. Politically also, friends, now these regimes, the Eastern Bloc regimes were very authoritarian. They stifled all dissent. You know, for example, in the Western Bloc, in the capitalist countries which are liberal democracies, what happens? That, say you have the capitalists, right, the owners of big corporates, they are one powerful lot. But their power is broadly distributed in the society. So the power of the capitalist is countervailed or kind of hemmed in by the power of the political ruling class. Are you with me? So governments may take what they call antitrust action or legislation, which is to, you know, if anybody is having a kind of a monopoly, they will break that corporation. And they've done that, Western governments. So economic power of the capitalists was countervailed or balanced by the political power of the politicians or the government. Media has its own importance and power. So any excesses of the government will be highlighted by the media. Trade union movement is strong. So they will try to secure the interests of the working class. You have environmentalist groups, civil society bodies. Are you with me? So you have different, social groups, different categories of persons, different social institutions enjoying some power and balancing each other out, preventing excesses from each other. But in the Soviet bloc, now please appreciate, there is only one ruling party. So opposition parties are not permitted. In the US or West you would have opposition parties continuously criticizing the government, keeping it under check, any misuse of power. But in the East, there was no political opposition which was permitted. Media was under the control of the government. The economy was also under the full control of the government. The education system was under the full control of the government. Freedom of speech and expression was greatly curtailed. There was no free press. Are you with me? So all power gets concentrated in this one body, which is the ruling party. Those who enjoy power in this body, they control everything in society. So these regimes were very totalitarian, very authoritarian. In fact, some scholars have suggested that there was a new ruling class in the Eastern Bloc, which was more exploitative than the bourgeois in the West, because their power was unchecked. कुछ लिख भी लो ना, लिखवा दो, मत बोलना जो बोल रहे हो कोई कोई, अपने आप समराइज करके लिख लो. तो लिखो, बोरिंग हो जाता है ये काम, बट चलो, इसमें एलियनेशन फील होती है बिटिया. बट लिखो क्या कि लास्ट क्या लिखा है, कुछ बोला था मैंने. हाँ, डाउनफॉल ऑफ द ईस्टर्न ब्लॉक. क्या नाम है तुम्हारा, स्लैप फ्लैप नहीं, काइंड ऑफ proved that, downfall of the Eastern Bloc proved that the Marxist framework is not an appropriate one. जल्दी जल्दी लिखो, मैं एलियनेशन में थोड़ा कम जीता हूं. The Marxist framework is not an appropriate one to organize the social and economic lives, to organize the social and economic lives of a people. Full stop. The Eastern Bloc collapsed under its own weight as the economies were hollowed out, ब्रैकेट में लिखो, ड्यू टू लैक ऑफ एनी इंसेंटिव और मोटिवेशन टू वर्क, ब्रैकेट क्लोज. And bracket close, and the authoritarian political systems and authoritarian political systems stifled the political aspirations of the people. Full stop. Some scholars suggest that many of the Eastern Bloc या socialist regimes many of the Eastern Bloc regimes, BLOC लिखते हैं ना कि BLOCK, Eastern Bloc regimes were governed by a new ruling class which was more exploitative than the bourgeois in the West. ठीक है. Francis Fukuyama, same point. Francis Fukuyama his book is titled The End of History and the Last Man. End of History and the Last Man. समझा दूं अगर अलाउ करो या डिक्टेट ही करूं? पहले समझना पड़ेगा, फिर डिक्टेट करेंगे. फ्रांसिस फुकुयामा क्या कहते हैं? His book is titled The End of History and the Last Man. And what he says, have you heard this concept of end of history? Where? Who talks about the end of history? Who? Karl Marx. When will history end according to Marx? With the establishment of the communist society. All social change will come to an end because there will be no contradictions, no conflicts. Yes or no? That will be the final stage of human social evolution. According to who? Sri Karl Marx. Fukuyama, he wrote a paper by the title End of History just before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then he published a book by the same title, End of History and the Last Man, after the collapse of Soviet Russia. And he says, ये है end of history. ये क्या? The demise of communism and the victory of liberal democratic framework as the only viable ideology to organize the lives of the people. समझ रहे आप? जो आइडियोलॉजिकल डिबेट दुनिया को डिवाइड करे रखी थी 40-50 साल से, लिबरल डेमोक्रेसीज की दो कंपीटिंग मेन आइडियोलॉजीज ये मानते हैं. एक थी मार्क्सिज्म या कम्युनिज्म की, दूसरी थी फाशिज्म की. Fascism which rose in Russia, Italy, Germany, Italy. Now that was defeated around the time of the Second World War, or during the Second World War. And the communist ideology was defeated, or proved defeated with the end of the Soviet bloc, right? Or the end of the Cold War. And ye hai, so now it is clear to the world that the only viable way, the only viable way to organize the lives of the people is in a liberal democratic framework. ठीक है? तो लिखो. Francis Fukuyama, in his book End of History and the Last Man, suggests that the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. Clearly establishes that the liberal democratic framework is a better socio-political system than कम्युनिज्म या मार्क्सिज्म. ठीक है. Raymond Aron, next criticism. Raymond Aron. He writes a kitab, very interestingly titled Marxism. Marxism is the opium of the intellectuals. Marxism is the opium of the intellectuals. Taking a cue from whose writings? क्या बोला था मार्क्स ने? Religion is the opium of the people. Right? That religion is basically something which stupefies you. It reduces your critical thinking ability. It makes you to blindly follow the prevailing system. It does not allow you to question. Are you with me? It makes you passive. That is what religion does to the masses, according to Marx. ये कहते हैं, this is precisely what Marxism has done to the intellectuals. Intellectuals have been blinded. Those who support Marxism, they have been blinded by Marxism. So, in their zeal to support Marxism, they gloss over its excesses. They refuse to see the flip side of Marxism. There have been mass murders by regimes of their own people in Soviet Russia, which the Marxist intellectuals refuse to see or talk about. Are you with me? The democratic aspirations of the people have been crushed ruthlessly at that, which the Marxist intellectuals refuse to acknowledge. So जो भी मार्क्सिज्म की खामियां हैं वो उसके, इफ आई यूज एन इंडियन वर्ड, इंडियन पॉलिटिकल वर्ड नाउ, जो उसके भक्त हैं उनको नहीं दिखती. ठीक है. With that, we take a break. We're done with a fairly detailed criticism of Sri Karl Marx. We are not done for the day, by the way. We are just taking a break. Please settle down. Friends, please settle down and quickly, those who are entering. So friends, having thus criticized Marx, having found so many faults in his writings, can we finally proclaim that Marx is dead? Or not? Can we lay Marx to rest? He has simply no relevance for our times. That he or his is an outdated ideology or a thought system, an outdated thought system. Yes or no? The answer is clearly no. Likho. Your heading though, in defense of who? Shri Karl Marx. Marx may have died, friends, more than what? 125, 140 odd years back. But he continues to be regarded as one of the foremost thinkers of the modern era. Marx continues to be regarded as one of the foremost thinkers of the modern era. Marxism, the system, the writings of Marx, has had a very profound impact on several societies. Has affected the lives of millions of people across the globe. In fact, at the cost of repetition, what we began with, Marx is regarded as one of the three most influential human beings to have ever lived. Such has been his impact. So you can't write off Karl Marx. Not only did he impact the lives of people in the Eastern Bloc for those 4 decades of the Cold War period, not only did he impact the lives of millions in the Eastern Bloc during those Cold War years, his writings also find resonance in the capitalist West till date. In the Eastern Bloc, his influence was very apparent. Why? Because they organized their socio-political lives and economic arrangements based on his writings, influenced by him. But even in the West. For example, friends, whenever global capitalism experiences any sort of shocks and instability, कौन याद आता है? Shri Karl Marx. Marxist writings are revisited. For example, when there was this last global shock was the US financial crisis, the subprime crisis of 2008. Are you aware broadly? I am not, so you better be. But there was some financial market, the housing market collapse in the US and affecting a lot of things. And the global capitalist economy led by the US was kind of shaken up, right? There were numerous opinion pieces and articles in the West. Was Karl Marx right? समझ रहे हैं आप? He was put on the cover of Time magazine. Time magazine is like the, poster boy of Western capitalism in many ways. So Marx, in his writings, has detailed the inherent instability of the capitalist system. And those writings ring true. Whenever capitalism faces an imminent kind of a threat, and it's not only during periods of instability or turmoil that one remembers Marx. Marx may be dead, but Marxism lives on. Where? In numerous movements of the working class across the globe. In the trade union movements across the globe, workers seek inspiration from the writings of who? Karl Marx. Till date. Not just the working class movement, friends, mainstream political parties, particularly those belonging to the left, seek inspiration, analysis from the writings of who? Marx, including in India. India has had long periods of influence and rule of leftist political parties like Communist Party of India, Marxist. Yes or no? In Kerala, in West Bengal, in Tripura, for a brief while in a coalition in the center during the United Front years in 1990s. Are you with me? Their policies, their analysis of society, their politics is affected by nowadays Marxism in India is on a decline in politics. Clearly, communist parties have been electorally sidelined. But they have had a profound impact on Indian politics since colonial times till several decades after independence. And even today they are a force. If not electorally, but at least say morally, and they're an important part of the opposition. In the academia, there is a strong leftist bias in India and in many other countries and societies. कौन सा है इंटेलेक्चुअल गढ़ या हब ऑफ द इंडियन इंटेलेक्चुअल्स? JNU. किसका गढ़ है वो? मार्क्सिस्ट का, लेफ्टिस्ट का. And the Narendra Modi Sarkar, with all its right-wing Hindutva leanings, has been unable to change that one bit. One of the education ministers of the Modi government, Prakash Javadekar, publicly stated, so he was accused of saffronizing the textbooks, removing the leftist influence and instead inserting a rightist influence. And he publicly commented, I have not changed a comma in the textbooks. Meaning what? So the leftist influence remains in our academia. and not just in India, in many countries. Why academia? Marxist writings resonate with various movements of the disprivileged sections of the society, not just the working class, across the globe. Whether it is the Naxalite movement in India, somewhere, or should I say indirectly inspired from Marxism, truly or directly inspired from Maoism, which is somewhat of a variant of Marxism, let us put it this way. Hai na? Or the various peasant struggles in Latin America. Or for that matter, the feminist movement. There are many women's groups and feminist writings which have a strong influence of who? Marx. Not so much. Caste-based movements, not so much. We'll discuss that in paper 2, but not so much. You know, R.K. Merton, he said, you call that a criticism or a appreciation, but he said Marxism is a self-defeating prophecy. Self-defeating prophecy. Did we discuss self-fulfilling prophecy somewhere in passing? We did. That something comes true because it has been predicted. Right? A self-defeating prophecy is the opposite. Something does not come true because it has been so predicted. So, Marxism is a self-defeating prophecy in the sense Marx predicted the downfall of capitalism, highlighting its various contradictions and ills. Because he so predicted, the capitalist economies took corrective action which prevented their downfall. They took measures to accommodate the working class within their interests within the capitalist framework, thereby dissipating the working class's revolutionary potential. Are you with me? And that is why capitalism has survived. Thanks to who? In some good measure to Karl Marx. Simply put, Marx highlighted the shortcomings and conflicts, contradictions within capitalism. Marx highlighted the shortcomings and contradictions in capitalism. Subsequently, capitalism transformed from exploitative type to welfare capitalism. Sorry? For example, the workers' long hours and clearly exploitatively low levels of pay are now a thing of the past. In advanced capitalism, workers are well paid, well taken care of. Are you with me? Political parties take care of them. Factory owners take care of the workers. Thanks to who? Capitalism. वरना मार्क्स ने कहा उठ के गर्दन काट देंगे, तो सुधर जाओ. तो उन्होंने कहा हम सुधर जाते हैं. ठीक है. सो कैपिटलिज्म में जो करेक्शंस हमने देखी हैं, या ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन ऑफ कैपिटलिज्म टू या द न्यूमरस वर्कर्स इंटरेस्ट एंड राइट्स दैट हैव बीन सिक्योर्ड इन अ कैपिटलिस्ट सोसाइटी, a fair amount of credit goes to Marx. अगर वो ना लिखता तो वर्कर्स की ये बेहतर जो पोजीशन है वो ना होती, ना लिखते. Lot of criticisms, next point in his defense. May I continue? A lot of criticisms of Marx stem from, frankly, an incomplete or partial understanding of his very voluminous, very extensive writings. Simply, critics have misunderstood Marx. Many critics have misunderstood Marx. उनको मार्क्स जी की समझ नहीं है, इसलिए वो क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं. पार्शियल रीडिंग की है या ओवर सिंप्लीफाइड अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ मार्क्स है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, Marx, the most oft repeated criticism is of economic determinism. That he says that the economy is the base, everything else is the superstructure, and the superstructure is shaped by the base. So he is not acknowledging the role of other factors in social change, critics argue. But please appreciate, this is basically a very oversimplified understanding of Marx. A finer reading will tell you what Marx really says, and please note down, according to Marx, the superstructure is shaped by the base. The superstructure is shaped by the base in the last instance. In the last instance. Meaning what? That eventually it is the economy which shapes the superstructure. In other words, friends, Marx does recognize that the superstructure can and does have an effect on the economy. He is not blind to it. But in the ultimate analysis or overall, yes, Marx does contend that it is the economy which eventually shapes the superstructure. Are you with me? अब मैंने आपको क्यों नहीं बताया ये पहले या पार्शियल क्यों पढ़ाया? Because frankly, in a limited number of lectures, I have to present to you somewhat of an oversimplified picture of Karl Marx for clear understanding. Are you with me? हर जगह हम कहते हैं two classes. He does talk about several other classes as well, very frankly. But for simplicity's sake, I've told you, he talks about two main classes. Are you with me? So a lot of criticisms of Marx stem from a partial understanding. Another example where critics have got him wrong. Should I pause? Should I pause? ठीक है. Another area where critics have got him wrong, he is accused of क्या बोलते हैं कि considering the individual as impotent, as being controlled or as a puppet of the society or economic forces. Right? As for ignoring the agency of the individual. But the same Karl Marx, in his voluminous writing, somewhere writes, what is history? The history is the acts of men. The acts of men in pursuit of their ends. History is the acts of men in pursuit of their ends. I repeat, history is the acts of men in pursuit of their ends. In other words, it is persons, ordinary people who create history through their actions as they strive to achieve whatever they have set their eyes upon. ठीक है? मार्क्स के टूमस्टोन पे क्या लिखा है? Taken from his writings, workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Matlab, this is literally a rousing call to action to the working class. He does not consider them to be these passive, or shaped by the society, determined by the society. He is saying, उठो, संघर्ष करो, अपनी किस्मत खुद बदलो. In other words, friends, again, we cannot, if we truly understand Marx, we cannot accuse him of ignoring or considering this individual as, a puppet or controlled by the society. He does give adequate attention. He does acknowledge the agency of the individual. Sorry? Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. But your chains. अपने बंधन ही तोड़ोगे. हाँ, chains, CHAINS. साथ उठ खड़े हो और अपनी किस्मत खुद लिखो. क्या लूज करोगे? अपने बंधन और कुछ नहीं. So you secure for yourself a better future by taking proactive steps. ठीक है ना? Marx has been accused of predicting wrongly. Right? A lot of his predictions have not come true. Communism नहीं establish हुआ, capitalism नहीं खत्म हुआ, working class nahi homogenize hui, and so on and so forth, which we just discussed. Yes, many of his predictions have not come true, but still, in many aspects of his analysis, he was quite on the mark. For example, he talks about the concentration of wealth in fewer hands as capitalism advances. Marx wrote about, he was a visionary in that sense, friends. He said that as capitalism advances, wealth will get concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. There's a 2018 report by Oxfam which says that 26 richest people in the world own as much wealth as 3.8 billion poorest people in the world, which is like 50%, the lower 50% in economic terms, the 50% of the world's population. 3.8 billion or roughly 50% of the world's population, poorest population. ठीक है? क्या है? Clearly there are very grave inequalities in present times. Marx was quite on the mark in his concept of, or in his analysis of alienation. Yes or no? Now things may have changed quite a bit since Marx's times for the workers. But the concept of alienation has been revisited and reapplied. It's not abandoned in modern society or in contemporary times. Even Marx was writing in modern society. But even in 20th and 21st century, the concept of alienation still is relevant. Many of us can personally identify with it. Like we had discussions in the class yesterday. Still, today's times. Yes or no? Scholars like C. Wright Mills, Herbert Marcuse have applied this concept of alienation in the 20th and 21st centuries. Modified it a bit, but it's still, and many of us have felt alienated, right? Even if we are better paid and blah blah. What these guys say, we'll discuss later, at some later stage, but just suffice with this mention for now. Also, Marx talked about the very close nexus between the capitalist class and the political rulers, the political elites. That whom do the political leaders support? Whose interests? The capitalist class. And what does Rahul Gandhi say of the Modi government? ये किसकी सरकार है? सूट बूट की सरकार है, अदानी अंबानी की सरकार है. Yes or no? So all accusations of crony capitalism, and not just in India. During the 2008 meltdown in the US economy, the US government came to the rescue of the big banks to bail them out. So clearly, there is a very out in the open kind of a nexus now between the political elites and the wealthy, the capitalists. ठीक है? So Marx may be dead, friends. Marx wrote somewhere, he said, there is a spectre which haunts Europe. The spectre of communism. In his times, spectre means ghost. There is a ghost which haunts Europe, the ghost of communism. Those who love Marx, for the want of a better word, they argue there is a spectre which haunts the world today, the spectre of Marx. ठीक है, तो मार्क्स का भूत अभी गड़ा नहीं है. मार्क्स मे बी डेड बट मार्क्सिज्म लिव्स ऑन. जब तक सूरज चांद रहेगा, मार्क्स तेरा नाम रहेगा. ठीक है? विद दैट वी आर डन विद द ग्रेट कार्ल मार्क्स. मार्क्स कौन दिलाएगा हमें एग्जाम में? मार्क्स दिलाएगा. ठीक है? बिफोर वी एंड द डे, bear with me for 10 to 15 to max 20 minutes. I have to this thing. अच्छा, एक गुड न्यूज दे दूं तो रुकोगे? There is no class tomorrow. That should give you ample energy to bear me for another 15 to 20 minutes. What I want to do is keep my promise, which is to discuss the previous year's questions of Durkheim, Merton and Parsons. ठीक है? Of the last assignment. So let us take them up. If you have the assignments in your phone, open them. Otherwise, I'll be dictating anyways. I'll be not dictating, I'll be addressing, discussing. So which guy you want me to discuss first? Parsons या Durkheim या क्या नाम है तुम्हारा? Merton. Whose questions? Whom did you find the toughest? Section B. Merton. Merton was most application based. Let us do Merton first. Couple of introductory remarks. I will be discussing several questions, but what I want you to take home from this discussion is not so much the answer to those specific questions, but the approach to these kind of questions, which are application based. Because clearly the same questions are unlikely to be repeated, right? So for example, I'm just reading out some questions, what we'll be discussing from Merton unit. How can we use reference group theory to understand fashion in society? using Merton's concepts of manifest and latent functions, explain the persistence of corruption in Indian society. There was another one, not here in the PYQs given to you, that you use the concept of manifest and latent functions to, or identify the manifest and latent functions of security of tenure of bureaucrats. Or another was, क्या नाम है तुम्हारा? Corruption, fashion, right? So several such. One was you apply Merton's theory of deviance to explain the traffic problem in urban India. Okay? So clearly they might ask you questions on reference group or manifest latent functions, but of course not again on fashion or again on traffic problem for deviance. They'll ask you to apply it elsewhere. So in such questions there are two parts. Guys, will you please stop the commotion? There are two aspects. One is the sociological theory, which you learnt in the previous week, which you were exposed to in the previous week. That is one part of the question. The other is stuff like fashion or corruption, etc., or security of tenure of bureaucrats, or traffic in India, about which you would know from common sense, or your reading in other subjects like ethics, you may have read about corruption or whatever. So what you need to do, you need to marry these two. Right? You need to bring them together. One simple approach, but not the best, is that you simply mention the theory which is being referred to, right? But that alone will not suffice. You have to connect it to the application part, right? Fashion or corruption or whatever. Are you with me? So we can't just only mention the theory, say क्या नाम है तुम्हारा reference group theory, without writing about fashion or connecting it to fashion. We will not be able to address the demand of the question. Okay? Now let me take up some of these questions to illustrate how we make those connections. Let us take, how can we use reference group theory to understand fashion in society? I repeat, how can we use reference group theory to understand fashion in society? How you can approach this question? Simply, you begin by defining what is a reference group in the introduction and write another line in the introduction itself. Right? So that you seem to be addressing the demand of the question, that R.K. Merton's theory of reference group can be applied to understand a variety of social situations, including fashion. Okay? Now you've connected it to the demand of the question. Full stop. Then what you do, please, in such answers you must use the sociological terminology associated with that concept. Okay? Think logically. The challenge would be, you have to do all of this within 8 minutes or 8 to 9 minutes. Okay? The connecting part. The theory part you would be very fluent with. The connection you'll have to think on. So if typically or in a direct question you are spending around 30-40 seconds to frame the answer, in such questions you may spend about 1 to 1.5 minutes, right, to frame the answer or draw that linkage, because it will require some greater innovative thinking kind of. Also, if it is a non-compulsory question, you can also consider not attempting, simply, and attempting another one, right? But if you must attempt this question because the other ones are, more difficult, or you don't have knowledge, then we'll see how we attempt it. So say you mention what is reference group and then a connecting line, that Merton's theory of reference group can be used to understand a variety of social situations, including fashion in society. Then think logically and tell me, who influences fashion sense? Or who is a reference group? Who are a reference group to determine or affect our sense of fashion? Celebrities for one. Okay, now a lot of students have mentioned celebrities in their answers. The only problem is they've mentioned only celebrities. Try to bring in more variety than that. Okay? So celebrities, say popular film stars, are a reference group that affect our sense of fashion. Which type of reference group? Non-membership reference. So write that. Right? Because ordinary people are not film stars, but they are inspired by film stars. So film stars, popular cinema actors are a non-membership reference group for large numbers of people. Are you with me? Then are there any, but don't confine it to one. So for example, whatever you guys are wearing right now, you are not dressed like film stars or celebrities. Who has affected your sense of fashion? Sorry? Absolutely. So peers, friends. If you are, a school or college going person of that age, you are affected by your friend circle. A college going person would be likewise affected his sense of fashion by his colleagues at work. These are who? Membership groups which serve as reference groups. Are you with me? Bring that dimension. So आपने non-membership reference groups की बात कर ली, membership groups as reference groups की बात कर ली. Terminologies or examples now. For a large segment of population in developing countries like India, who are a reference group? Western persons, Western populations are a reference group. So many of us dress, or our fashion sense is Western. We dress in what? T-shirts and jeans and shirts and pants. Are you with me? But for some people in a traditional or modernizing society, Westerners may be a negative reference group. For a large section of the population, they are a positive reference group, but for some, they may be a negative reference group. So some people might insist upon, there's a traditionalizing tendency, insist upon wearing their traditional attire, sanctioned by their culture. Are you with me? I will not wear shirt and pant, I will wear a kurta pajama. Or I will, so recently there was a controversy on the right to wear the hijab. Muslim women rejected or insisted upon retaining hijab. Are you with me? Rejecting Western cultural influences. Are you with me? Bring that dimension. You can bring that dimension. Not necessarily it will strike. It must strike. Are you with me? So talk about positive reference groups. Acha, when you are this thing, influenced by celebrities, by this or that, what do? You undergo anticipatory socialization. In other words, you start dressing up like them. And fashion is not confined to clothing. It's also about footwear, accessories, gadgets. Yes or no? So use or bring in the concept of anticipatory socialization. You may, क्या बोलते हैं, हम कुछ जाके बाद में संस्कृताइजेशन पढ़ेंगे in paper 2, you can even bring in that. I am not talking about it because I have not explained it. Basically, Sanskritization means lower caste, members of the lower caste in certain situations may imitate the lifestyle of the higher castes. For example, they may start sporting a janeu like the Brahmins. Okay? This is also one sense of fashion. कितनी सारी डायमेंशंस आ जाती हैं. सो ये नहीं कि केवल सेलिब्रिटीज का लिखेंगे. पॉजिटिव रेफरेंस ग्रुप्स, नेगेटिव रेफरेंस ग्रुप्स, है ना. ड्यूरिंग फेस्टिविटीज, who is the reference group to determine your sense of fashion? Elders of the family often. Lot of girls who would not otherwise wear a sari on festive occasions would sport a sari. In that case, your mother, grandmother, they may be a reference group. Are you with me? So bring in. Advertising industry uses this concept of a reference group to sell clothing, to sell footwear, so many things. To a bar of soap. Yes or no? सितारों का साबुन, तो हम भी लक्स से नहाएंगे. हम उनके जैसे कपड़े, या क्रिकेटर्स आर एन इन्फ्लुएंशियल रेफरेंस ग्रुप फॉर अ लॉट ऑफ यूथ, है ना, तो हम उनके जैसे कपड़े पहनेंगे, या सो मेनी थिंग्स. आर यू विद मी? सो पेपर योर आंसर विद एग्जांपल्स, bring in the various concepts related to that theory. Don't write a GSish or generic answer, right? That is what you have to do. Let's move to the next. सोप वाला फैशन में नहीं डालेंगे हम, है ना. ज्वेलरी, क्लोथिंग, सेलिब्रिटीज कितनी चीजें इंडोर्स करते हैं ना. Using Merton's concepts of manifest and latent functions, I'm moving on, permit me. Using Merton's concepts of manifest and latent functions, explain the persistence of corruption in Indian society. I repeat, using Merton's concepts of manifest and latent functions, explain the persistence of corruption in Indian society. ठीक है? How you can begin this answer? Now the keyword here is persistence of corruption. Persistence means what? That corruption sticks despite efforts to the contrary. That is the implication. So you can begin your answer by talking about how that in India there are several constitutional legal measures that have been taken to reduce or address corruption, such as CVC, Lokpal, sunshine laws like the RTI, है ना, numerous such things. Social movements like the anti-corruption movement, numerous things. Departmental vigilance committees, various mechanisms we have. Yet, corruption persists in Indian society. This can be explained by using Merton's concepts of manifest and latent functions. Or you can say, if you remember from ethics or in general, that India ranks 84 or so in the corruption perception index of the Transparency International, to highlight how corruption persists, right? The extent, there's a good extent of corruption prevalent in Indian society. And then you link it to Merton's theory, that this can be explained using Merton's theory of manifest and latent functions. Then you say, what are the manifest functions of corruption? So and so. And what are the latent functions of corruption? Think logically. अच्छा, एक तो क्या नाम है तुम्हारा, सांगवान. In Sangwan, just a cautionary word, a wrong thing is mentioned. That latent functions may be negative consequences. That is incorrect. That is clearly incorrect. Cancel it out from your knowledge, your mind. ठीक है? Latent functions or functions by definition are positive consequences. Those which are expected and work towards, those are manifest functions. Those which are hidden or unanticipated are latent functions. If they are negative consequences, they are called dysfunctions. ठीक है? हाँ, so manifest functions of corruption क्या है? And and then you can in one line, before you come to the, if you space permitting, you can in one line define manifest and latent functions in the second para. Manifest functions are those positive consequences that are intended and recognized. Latent functions are those which are unintended and unrecognized. Full stop. Then give the heading manifest functions of corruption. क्या है manifest functions? What are the anticipated or intended benefits of corruption? Simply think that if I am a corrupt bureaucrat, why am I being corrupt? And why me? You are a corrupt bureaucrat, you guys will be. Then why are you engaging in corruption? You are taking a bribe. Why are you taking a bribe? What is your intended benefit that you want to derive from it? साफ बात है, it improves your material conditions. It improves your purchasing power. So whatever you can't afford from your honest salary, that you can afford through means of corruption. Earlier आपके घर में AC नहीं था, AC आ जाएगा, कूलर था तो. You can afford a better education for your child. You can afford fancier shoes for your children. So many things. iPhones, है ना? Whatever you can't in your honest salary. What about the क्या नाम है, intended positive consequences for the bribe giver? I am giving you bribe. Why am I giving you bribe? You are the government functionary, I am a citizen. मेरे को क्या फायदा है? मैं क्या फायदा चाह रहा हूं? Faster work, साफ बात है. So it helps me to bypass the long drawn processes of government, ensuring speedily that my work is done. और क्या फायदे हैं मुझे? क्यों हम रिश्वत देते हैं? Sorry? What do I do? What benefit do I derive from that connection? Not for connection's sake. Sorry? Simply, I can derive monetary benefit by paying a bribe. Say I can be awarded a government contract due to favoritism instead of the other guy. Yes or no? So if you award me a contract of 10 crores out of which I make 1 crore in profit, I'll gladly pay you a bribe of 1 lakh. Yes or no? और क्या फायदे हैं मुझे? एस्केप पनिशमेंट. हम ठुल्ले को हम क्यों पुलिसमैन को ब्राइब करते हैं? साफ बात है, फाइन देंगे रेड लाइट जंपिंग का तो 1000 रुपीज जाएगा, 2000 रुपीज जाएगा, एंड यू गिव 1 हरी पत्ती. Your cost of compliance with government rules and regulations is reduced. Right? These are the manifest functions of corruption. The intended, anticipated benefits, positive benefits, positive consequences. Now, what are the latent functions of corruption? Meaning those positive consequences which are not intended or anticipated by the participants. कुछ positive side effects. मैं इसलिए नहीं घूस ले दे रहा ताकि ये हो, बट ये भी हो गया, किसी का कुछ फायदा हो गया. Absolutely. So corruption, money, you can't keep it in a bank, in your savings account or in this thing. तो क्या करोगे? Spend करोगे. इकोनॉमी को स्टिमुलस मिलता है. Yes or no? Lot of people, a lot of corruption money is invested, say, in the real estate sector. That receives a fillip. इंडिया में कैश अच्छा रियल एस्टेट में लग जाता है. 1 करोड़ की प्रॉपर्टी खरीद रहे हो, 20 लाख उसकी स्टैम्प पेपर की या जो भी ऑफिशियल वैल्यू है एज पर दी सर्कल रेट, 80 लाख कैश में दे रहे हो. फिर क्या होगा? वहां पे मकान बनेगा, कितने मजदूरों को नौकरी मिलेगी उधर. मैं नहीं इसलिए पैसे ले दे रहा ताकि मजदूर को नौकरी मिले, बट मिल रही है, उसका भी फायदा हो रहा है. दैट्स अ लेटेंट फंक्शन. आर यू विद मी? गवर्नमेंट को फायदा हो रहा है. द गवर्नमेंट बेनिफिट्स. हाउ? बिकॉज इट्स कॉस्ट ऑफ एक्विजिशन ऑफ टैलेंट इज रिड्यूस्ड. The burden on the exchequer is reduced, the salary burden. Simply, you are worth 2 lakhs in the private sector. You will settle gladly so, हाथ जोड़ के, for a 50,000, 55,000 की कलेक्टर की जॉब or not. उसी के लिए इतनी मेहनत कर रहे हो. Why? Because you know कि 3 लाख तो अंडर द टेबल बन जाएगा. तो सरकार को आप 2 लाख का आदमी कितने के पड़े? 50,000 रुपए के. कितना फायदा है ना. ठीक है. नाउ सम स्टूडेंट्स हैव अ प्रॉब्लम दैट क्या हम करप्शन को जस्टिफाई करेंगे when you are sitting for a government exam, for a bureaucratic नौकरी? The answer is yes, because that is the demand of the question. And if your ethical compass, if your antaratma jhanjodos you too much, in the conclusion you can mention, however, there are numerous manifest and latent dysfunctions of corruption, such as ekad. Okay, it tears the moral fabric of the society apart and पता नहीं क्या क्या है ना. So 1-2 लिख दिए, because of which stringent measures should be taken. मैं तो नहीं करूंगा. ये नहीं लिखोगे, ठीक है. Nextly, so I hope you get the drift. Critically examine how Durkheim and Merton explicate anomie. Explicate बस इन्होंने कठिन शब्द यूज कर लिया. Explicate का मीनिंग होता है explain in detail. Can we address this? I repeat, critically examine how Durkheim and Merton explicate anomie. ठीक है? So do I need to discuss this? Yes. Durkheim. Critically examine, हाँ. since the both are mentioned together, it is implicit that you draw some sort of a comparison. It is implicit. Huh? Similarities, differences, whatever you can point out. Huh? Next question, with suitable examples, explain how conformity and deviance coexist in a society as propounded by Merton. I repeat, with suitable examples, explain how conformity and deviance coexist in a society as propounded by R.K. Merton. Is this clear, or does it need discussion? It's a straightforward question. How conformity and deviance. So you discuss the 5 responses. The first is conformity. Most members of the society conform. The rest are deviant responses. है ना? And giving examples. ठीक है? So retreatists के कौन हो गए? Drug addicts or alcoholics. ऐसे ऐसे करके examples दे देंगे. Innovators के thieves या robbers and burglars. What are the reactions of R.K. Merton to the functionalism of social anthropologists? I repeat. What are the reactions of Merton to the functionalism of social anthropologists? Question mark. Bring out the limitations of latent functions. Are we clear on this question? What are his reactions to the Merton's reactions to the functionalism of social anthropologists? The 3 criticisms of classical functionalism of Malinowski and Brown that we had discussed: postulate of functional unity, functional universalism, and indispensability. And limitations of latent functions also we had captured somewhere. Nextly, कौन सा करूं अभी? Durkheim वाले बोल देता हूं. Durkheim argued that society is more than the sum of individual acts. I repeat, Durkheim argued that the society is more than the sum of individual acts. Full stop. Discuss. Now, which of the 4 topics under Durkheim which we had discussed do we have to primarily mention in this question? Social facts. Bilkul. So we have to talk about how, or in our introduction we'll talk about how Durkheim in his functional analysis of society considers that the society, that the individual is relatively unimportant. It is the collectivity which is given preeminence in his analysis. Right? Then in the next para you talk about social facts. Right? So, and the various features of social facts are what? Collective ways of acting, feeling and thinking. So there is a collective dimension. It's not just me plus you plus you plus you plus you. When we all come together, we give rise to a kind of a new reality above and beyond our individual selves. Are you with me? And this social reality, these social facts are external to the individual. They have a constraining effect. Are you with me? They are independent of the individual. These aspects you'll have to highlight. ठीक है? What is the definition? Collective ways of acting, feeling and thinking external to the individual and endowed with the power of coercion by reason of which they control him. So individual is subordinated to the social facts. Then you can, in the subsequent paras, with 1 or 2 examples, you can substantiate from his other writings, such as his concept of division of labor. Division of labor is simply not me doing a specialized task in Durkheim's writings. What is it? That when I am doing a specialized task and you are doing another, and so on, what does it give rise to? A reality far beyond or more than merely you and I. Which is what? It creates an interdependence between these members of the society, giving rise to organic solidarity. Are you with me? Or likewise, in next para, in his theory of religion. Religion is not about the individual in search of his, in a kind of, on a spiritual quest. Are you with me? It's not about my relationship with my creator. None of that BS. It is what? It produces collective effervescence when we collectively sing together, etc. It binds or it strengthens the bonds binding the individual to the collectivity. Are you with me? It creates social solidarity. These kind of dimensions you have to bring forth. Okay? Explain whether Durkheim's theory of division of labor is relevant in the present day context. Does it need discussion? Due to paucity of time or honestly? Ha, her question is, do we have to mention both sides of the coin, supporting Durkheim and not supporting him? The answer is yes. Okay. So in the present day context, why is he relevant? His theory of division of labor. Today we are living in the era of super specialization, friends. हेलो या सो कहां थे हम come on give me a moment now explain whether division of labor is it relevant in the present day context today you say it is relevant because we are living in an era of super specialization say in the medical profession you don't have just doctors but you have very give any one or two examples right and that is leading to increased interdependency. Increased coordination is required. Are you with me? Then can you say it is not relevant? Or why its application is limited to understand the present day society? For example, it also creates divisions. It creates inequalities and exploitation, the Marxist dimension, which is not adequately addressed by Durkheim's theory. And give any contemporary example, say, in Manesar, near Gurgaon, the Maruti plant saw violent protest by the workers. Or you had in Tuticorin, I think, the plant of that company which supplies to Intel. Or Copper Sterlite, and another one was there. Copper Sterlite was there, another which supplies inputs to Apple or something. Foxtron or something. Foxconn. है ना? वहाँ पे you talk about that. ठीक है? So that conflict dimension is not adequately addressed in Durkheim's theory. समझ गए? Explain Durkheim's basic arguments on suicide. Can you analyze? Is this much clear? Explain Durkheim's basic arguments on suicide. Straightforward. Can you analyze high suicide rates of contemporary Indian society with Durkheim's theory? We discussed that. Farmer suicides, student suicides, terrorist attacks, and various such. Okay, so we've discussed that already. How can Parsons' Agile framework be used to analyze key problems in a society? Illustrate your answer with an example from Indian society. So how you will address is, you will explain the Agile framework, linking each of them to a problem in Indian society. Two ways. One, either you find a big problem which can be linked to all the four. If you can't do that in that limited time, you discuss different problems associated with the different, and you simplify it. For example, when you're talking about adaptation, what do you have to look at? Economic problems, or which are solved by the economy. For example, it could be food shortage, underdevelopment. Are you with me? Say, take a problem like Naxalism, which can cover a lot of areas. So there is a problem of underdevelopment in the Naxal regions. Yes or no? That needs to be addressed. So we need job creation and investments, etc. in the Naxal affected areas. Is there then you look at the other goal attainment, is there a political dimension to the Naxal issue? Are you with me? So the government will prioritize what has to be our approach to tackle Naxalism. There is broadly a two-pronged approach. One is you encourage developmental projects in Naxal areas. The other is the hard approach, basically militarily tackling Naxalism. Are you with me? इस तरह से उसको एड्रेस करोगे. हाँ, लीगल एंड जुडिशियल, सोशलाइजेशन वगैरह से लिंक करोगे. एनालाइज रेलेवेंस ऑफ पैटर्न वेरिएबल्स इन स्टडी ऑफ सोशल चेंज. कैन वी डू दैट? श्योर. Critically analyze Parsons' views on society as a social system. You explain what is his theory of social system and then some critical analysis. ठीक है? बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. And I gave you the good news, right? That tomorrow is an off. Saturday is also an off. Sunday is also an off. जाओ जी लो अपनी जिंदगी सिमरन्स, ठीक है.